Today we are in Sunny Isles Beach and we're walking through a new area that we haven't done yet on the walks. This is over by 178th Street and this park behind me unfortunately is closed. I thought maybe it'd be open. It is Senator Margolis Park. But anyways, this is a pretty beautiful area to walk around. There's lots of condos around here. Not sure if we'll get any water views today, but we'll walk around and see what we find. One thing that I've been wanting to cover, because I just see this all the time in the comments and I feel like it needs to be addressed at this point, is so many people are talking about how the housing market in the Western United States is completely crashing, it's falling off a cliff. Meanwhile, over in the eastern half of the US, especially in the Northeast and down here in the South, that things are still booming and prices are still going up and there's still bidding wars and there's this and that going on. And why would this be happening? Why would we be having this dynamic and both at the same time? The interesting thing is the overall US numbers, when you look at median home prices, have been falling since the middle of last year, about June of 2022. But that is the median, and it takes into consideration all of the housing markets across the entire country. And depending on which website you look at, it's gone down by maybe a couple percentage points. If you're looking at Realtor.com data, or if you look at Redfin data, it's down by almost 10 percentage points. But here's the interesting thing about this. If the entire country was going down simultaneously, like the western half is, then one thing that we would surely be seeing at this point would be a much steeper decline in the overall median home price. The declines that we've been seeing that we can chart on the data charts are only painting a part of the picture. Since you have a very strong market, relatively speaking, in the eastern half of the country and a very weak one in the western half, these median home values that we're seeing go down are kind of like the middle ground between both of those. But if they were both going down at the same time, I think we'd be seeing much bigger declines than we already have been. So let's dig into this a little bit further. In all the 12 major housing markets that are west of Texas, if you include Austin, Texas, all these areas have seen year-over-year price declines. In stark contrast to that, in the 37 biggest metro areas that are east of Colorado have all seen home prices rise year-over-year, although at a much slower rate than we have been seeing over the past couple of years. And the interesting thing about this is not something that we've really ever seen happen before, in terms of one side of the country starting to completely falter and the other side still holding up pretty strong. So what's going on and why is this happening? I mean, if you guys look at this chart right here, you can see that it's a pretty big difference from one side to the other. But what appears to be going on is the western half of the country is far more vulnerable to the tech sector that has been having big problems with a ton of different layoffs that have been happening over the past year, and you have stock prices that have been plummeting, which helps all these people that are heavily invested in stocks, lose a big chunk of their wealth relatively overnight. And when you combine that with the rising interest rates, these markets are also some of the most expensive markets in the entire country that are far more susceptible to rising interest rates than, let's say, Cleveland, Ohio, for example, or even, in ordinary markets here in Florida that were relatively affordable. If you're looking at a house that's 350 grand in Florida versus one that's 700,000 in Seattle or San Francisco or wherever, those interest rate hikes are going to have a much bigger impact on your purchasing power, for example. But there is more to the story than just that, because the other part of this picture that we need to look at is the job market, okay? The eastern half of the US, particularly in the southern part of the United States right now, have still been attracting a lot of companies and a lot of jobs. And at the same time, you have the western half of the country that is heavily built on tech losing a lot of jobs. In San Francisco, for example, home prices are down over 10% when you're looking at this Black Knight data. And if you look at Redfin data, it's more like 18 or 19%. It is much bigger than that, depending on which data source you look at. And in Seattle, for example, it's down 7.5%. But then you take a look at Orlando, prices are up 9.3%. You come here to Miami, where I'm at, prices are up 12%. And it is just a crazy difference, guys. And I understand this. And I know sometimes when people see my videos and say, oh, the housing market's not crashing here, blah, 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 blah. Well, I get that. I get that not everywhere has been feeling these effects so far. But I think the question now is not if these areas will feel the effects, but when and how severe, really. And even though things have been slowing down quite a bit here in Miami and in Florida in general, like I showed you guys in a video last week, the prices are still up and things are still crazier than they should be. It could continue for a little while longer because we still have a lot of people that are moving here for jobs still on their way. You have a lot of companies that have opened up businesses over the past couple of years, and their employees are still in the process of moving here, which obviously just makes housing more expensive. By the way, a lot of these condos that you guys see behind me here, they range in price by quite a bit. If you look at what's available here, I saw 1-bedrooms here as low as $300,000, 2-bedrooms starting in the low $400,000 range, and then of course it just goes up from there. And you know, take it as you want. You can think that's a good deal, a bad deal, or whatever. But the reality is, guys, Atlantic Ocean's only a few blocks that way, so all this is walking distance to the beach. Very safe area. Obviously, you can see it's clean, quiet, not much going on. But of course, all these buildings are pretty old and are probably going to be facing some major renovations and HOA increases very soon. So there's that as well. And I hear from you guys all the time in the comments saying, well, I'm in the Northeast and it's still very competitive up here. Homes are still flying off the market in some cases. And you know, this story from Black Knight that I'm talking about here, they referenced a real estate agent up in Hartford, Connecticut, and she's saying that it seems like the interest rate hikes have had no effect on the market at all, and people are still just, you know, clamoring to get homes over there, and you have houses going under contract within a matter of a couple days. Also, when you combine that with the fact that it's not far away from Boston and New York City, it's a lot more affordable, and you know, people that can now work remotely or whatever are moving into these areas because it's just so much cheaper. So you have all these dynamics at play that we just really haven't seen before. There's stories of people going to open houses still and they're completely packed. You know, you got 20 people waiting outside to see the properties over in this area, and it's absolutely insane that people are kind of jumping in head first right now to get a house like that when you hear stories like this. But now that the National Association of Realtors has posted the first year-over-year home price decline nationwide of only 0.2% for the first time in 11 years, more economists than ever now are jumping on the bandwagon, basically in agreement that housing prices have further to fall. Well, no kidding, right? It's not really a big surprise that we're likely to see the markets that went up the most also come down the most now that things are starting to reverse. But at the same time, it's like, where is going to get hit, you know? Because a lot of people say Florida's going to crash 50%, and maybe it will, guys. I mean, honestly, I hope it does, but who knows? But if you look at Boise, Idaho, for example, these guys have basically been the poster child of one of these pandemic Zoom towns where you had so many people pile into the area when remote work became very popular. But now home prices are down 10.5% in just a year. So that's a pretty big decline as well. And this is all according to Black Knight's data. I think depending on where you look at some of this data, the numbers can change pretty dramatically. You guys know that I'm a pretty big fan of Redfin because they update their numbers every single month, unlike many of these other data sources. You know, sometimes they only update them quarterly or they lag behind quite a bit. So I just like that Redfin is on top of it more than anybody else, it seems like. But the funny thing is, now that more experts and economists agree that the housing market's likely to continue going down, they're all pretty much in agreement that even in the strong markets here on the eastern half of the country are going to see things starting to reverse sooner than later. Now, nobody knows the timeline of that, because that's one thing that people always ask all the time in the comments is when? When are prices going to start going down? Well, it depends on a lot of things, guys. It depends on when you start seeing surges in inventory. It depends on when unemployment starts going up. It depends on when and if the mortgage interest rates get high enough to make housing even more unaffordable. Like, there's so many variables in specific markets that it's an impossible question to answer. I can't even tell you when it's going to start going down here in Miami, where I live, and I've worked here as an agent for 14 years, and I still don't know what's going to happen. All we can do is guess, based on what's happened before and taking into consideration all the madness that's been happening lately with the banking crisis, the interest rates, the recession, etc. But I think one thing that pretty much everybody can agree on of why prices are still as high as they are in a lot of these areas is all just comes down to inventory, guys. Inventory is still pretty low, historically speaking. Even though it has been improving, it is still low. And especially in the Northeast, which I think is one of the main reasons why you have prices there still so high. Because the lower the inventory is, the more pressure that puts on buyers to offer more and be more competitive, because you just don't have the selection. But like I have said a couple times, every single spring, for as long as we can look back at the housing data, inventory tends to tick up. And March, historically speaking, is kind of one of the lowest inventory months when you just go and look at the previous graphs of inventory of where things were at. And after March is when it starts to tick up, and usually towards July, around the peak, that's usually when you'll see the most homes for sale on the US housing market. And then it just kind of ebbs and flows from there. So if this year follows every other year's previous trend, then we're likely to see inventory go up very, very soon. And listen, I'm a realistic person, guys. Is there a possibility that it doesn't go up at all? Sure, anything is possible. And that will be yet another wild card thrown into all of this that changes the dynamic of things. And that's why I make so many videos, because so much changes so fast, and it's really the only way to be in the know of what's happening on a weekly basis. And it's even hard to get a clear picture of where inventory is even at, because once again, it depends on what numbers are you looking at. For example, if you look at the Fred charts of the active listing count in the US, it last updated in February, which, like I said, is lagging because it's already almost April. Well, according to them, there's about 578,000 homes listed on the US housing market, and that doesn't include new construction, by the way. Those are just like existing homes for sale, basically. And then pre-pandemic, though, that number would have been around 1 million in the slow months, which is right now, to about 1.3 million in the busy months. So looking at it like that, you could pretty much say that inventory is at about half of where it was historically when the market was more balanced. But then if you flip the switch and look at Redfin's data, it's like a whole nother picture, which is just very interesting to me, because supposedly this is tracking the same exact thing, the amount of active listings on the US housing market at any given point in time. If you look at Redfin's data, pre-pandemic, in the busy months, you'd have about 2.3 million homes for sale at any given moment, and about 1.8 million homes for sale when things were kind of slow, December through March, basically. But today, Redfin's data shows that there's about 1.3 million active listings on the US housing market, which is almost an 800,000 discrepancy between what Redfin's saying and the Fred data. So it's kind of hard to know what to trust, guys. That's why when it comes to real estate and knowing your market and watching the new listings and kind of getting a feel for how many listings are on the market now compared to a year ago is invaluable, because that's ultimately going to tell you the state of affairs where you live. Now, I don't think that this year we're going to get to let's say 2018 or 2019 levels of inventory on the market, but I do think it's possible that we get to 2020 levels, which would put us between roughly 1.8 and 2 million homes for sale, according to Redfin's data. So let's see if that happens, guys. All we can do is track it and see where things go, and watch the new numbers as they come in. And if you ask me, that is one of the biggest arguments for Florida's housing market to finally start coming back down to earth, because inventory here, like I explained in the video last week, has been surging. It's up something in the neighborhood of 178% across the entire state, which is huge, okay? And we haven't seen inventory surges in places like that, like in the Northeast, for example, which all you guys are always happy to tell me that there's still bidding wars and things are crazy over there. But how is that a good thing? I don't know. How are you happy that that's the situation with pricing in your area? I mean, yeah, it's great if you're a home seller that hasn't sold their home in the last 10, 15 years and are making a fortune, but if you're a buyer, that's terrible. So you guys say there's never any people around? There's actually quite a bit of people walking around over here, which is surprising. Usually you don't see that many people walking around the sidewalks in general, but here we go. There's people. So one thing that's for sure is we know that the luxury market is getting crushed right now, because you're seeing a lot of people list luxury properties thinking they're going to get prices from 2 years ago, and it's just not happening. But the interesting thing about this is when you go over to LA, for example, they have something that's coming into effect soon called the mansion tax. And if you haven't heard about this, it's basically a tax that's going to be a 4% tax on sales that are above $5 million, okay? And a 5.5% tax on sales that are above $10 million. This applies to all properties that are sold after April 1st of 2023. Or you have a bunch of luxury home sellers in the LA area right now completely scrambling to sell their mansions that are worth these insane values before this April 1st deadline. And they're going to insane lengths to make this happen. In fact, there was a couple stories today about one listing that's giving away a free luxury car of your choice if you were to buy this house before April 1st. So the house is listed for $16.5 million, and they're offering the buyer their choice of an Aston Martin Vantage, an Aston Martin DBX 707, a McLaren GT, a Bentley Bayaga, I don't even know how to say that, all in case you close on this property before April 1st. That's all you got to do. So, give you a free car. You even have some home sellers willing to give a $1 million commission bonus to the selling agent of the property, whoever sells it before April 1st. And believe it or not, sellers like this are actually saving money and making a good deal by offering this, because say they pay that $1 million in commission, well, they would have had to pay $1.54 million in the mansion tax when you have a property that's $15 million, for example. So it's very interesting to see things like this going on. And obviously, the problem is this can create some bad behavior from real estate agents, because when there's a $1 million bonus on the table, who knows the type of things that people are willing to say or do to get people to close on properties like that. So yeah, I don't know. Sounds like it's just opening up the gate for even shadier behavior from real estate agents. I don't know. What do you guys think? But one of my cases that I think is probably one of the strongest arguments right now for home prices starting to go down, even in areas where they've been climbing still, is the massive buy versus rent ratio right now. And there's a bigger gap from what it costs to buy versus rent than there has been since 2006, guys. Right before the last crash in the housing market. That's the last time we saw ratios like this. And for example, the way it is right now, if a buyer were just put down an average of a 10% down payment and a 30-year fixed rate mortgage, okay, your mortgage payment would be roughly $1,176 more than renting an apartment at the end of 2022. And the report says that the cost of homeownership has completely surged 71% over the past 3 years, which is an average of about 20% a year, or even more, obviously. Rent growth in this same time frame has only been about 6.3% every year. So the difference of what it costs to rent versus buying is huge right now. And you can say all you want that renting is a waste of money and you're not gaining any equity and this and that, but at the same time, guys, it gives you flexibility. It gives you the chance to save more money by downsizing or moving to a cheaper rental, since the most of the time leases don't go past a year. It gives you a chance to move around and save money at will. I've also seen some people say in the comments, well, you know, if I'm going to throw away 30 grand on rent, for example, you know, renting a $3,000 apartment, that's 36 grand for the year, I'm going to throw away on rent. Or I could just buy something, and even though if my house goes down in value 36,000, I'm in the same position, but at least I own the property and I'm getting the tax benefits and this and that. So that is one way to look at it, and using that logic alone does make some sense. But like I've said a million times before, you can always change the interest rate that you're paying for the property, but you can never change the price you paid for the home, guys. So if you were to be one of these people that goes out and buys right now and pays a high price premium at a time when prices are either going down, depending on where you live, or have the likelihood of going down very soon, you're locking yourself into a price that you're never going to be able to escape. And whenever the day comes that you do want to sell, you might not actually be able to sell for a profit. And that's the biggest mistake and danger with buying in an environment like this, if you ask me, versus just renting for a little while. Even though there is money wasted in a circumstance like that, it's temporary, right? You're only going to waste money for a couple years until you buy something. And more importantly, whenever you do decide to buy something, your options and your flexibility on what you will be able to buy as inventory does go up is probably going to be a whole lot better than what people are facing right now. So I mean, the choice is yours. Obviously, I can never tell anyone exactly what to do, but I think that waiting another year or so is not going to hurt anyone at this point, because it's not like all this is going to reverse overnight and you're going to see prices shoot back up to the moon. But anything is possible. So use your best judgment, guys. Learn your market, figure out the inventory trends. Are prices going up? Are prices going down? Are places still getting multiple offers? You know, how stable is your job? Can you afford the house on just one income if you have a 2-income household, etc.? Figure this stuff out before jumping into it, because it's a very dicey time. You have to really weigh your options and your risks right about now. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you click the bell notification down below. YouTube will alert you every time I post a new video. And if you don't want to wait, check out my next one on the screen right over here, and I'll see you in the next one.